Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to show you how you can create patterns using Inkscape. And we may end up switching over to GIMP. It just depends. I will use GIMP towards the end to kind of show you the benefits of one of the ways that we're going to create patterns, but we'll get into that later on. Right now I just want to show you how you can create the patterns. And there's a couple of ways that you can create them. One is if you know the dimensions of the item that the pattern is going to be on, then you can set your canvas in Inkscape. You can set your canvas to that size and then create a pattern inside of a rectangle or a circle or whatever shape and fill the entire surface with that pattern, and then you can export that as one image, and then when you submit that image to the marketplace or wherever you're going to be, or the customer, it will be one pattern that is exactly the right size, and you can control exactly how the pattern looks. There's another way that you can do it, which is by creating one small image that is designed so that when it's lined up with itself, it repeats. And I'm going to show you how to do both of those in this video. And to start with, you're going to see that I'm using a tile that we created in a previous video. And if you saw that video, you may notice a couple of different things. I've edited this. After I was done with the video before, the last video, I went in and made some adjustments. I've corrected this issue where this side wasn't exactly the right shape. And then the other thing that I think I mentioned in the video was we lost these circles when we did the combination, and when we added the two shapes together or subtracted them, however you want to look at it. And so I went in and created these circles to put those back in. But other than that, this is the same shape. And you can see I didn't touch up everything. Here's a little bit of a white gap. And the reason why I did that, or didn't do that, is because I wanted this to look I wanted it to look like what it really is, and that is pretty much a drawing of this tile. Now, true, we used a vector, or we used a raster image to start with, but we've went in and edited this and changed it so much that we could there's a lot of things we could do, but if you want it to look hand drawn, or you want it to give that feel, then you kind of want these irregularities. You don't want it to be too symmetrical, and that's what I'm going for here. I want this pattern to have a hand drawn feel, and that's one of the ways you can do that, by not making everything so symmetrical. So to get into this demonstration of creating patterns, the first one we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to create a pattern inside of a shape in Inkscape. And let's say that we were going to use, let's say that the design called for a surface. I'm going to turn this off so it doesn't distract us while we're working on the canvas size. Let's say that the area that we want to put the pattern on has to be, we'll just make it something arbitrary, like 2500 pixels tall and 1800 pixels wide. So we'll come up here to File, Document Properties. We're going to change the width of this to 1800, okay, and we're going to change the height to 2500. So now we have this tall rectangle. And you might think of like wall art, maybe if it's a portrait orientation, or maybe a poster or a phone case. There's a lot of things that are oriented this way. So we've changed our document sizes. So now we have our document sized to the exact dimensions of what we need. So all we have to do now is create the image that we want to put on something that's that size. Now to do that, let's bring back our tile here. Now what we could do is we could go through here, we could shrink this down. I need to select the group and not just one layer of it. So if you didn't pick up on that, what happened was I had only selected the black and I was scaling only that. When you're working with groups, you got to make sure that you have the whole group before you begin scaling. Otherwise you're going to scale part of it but not all of it. Anyway, back to what I was saying. You could go in here and just scale these down to the size that you want them to be, and then just duplicate it a bunch of times and lay it out exactly how you want it. And that would work, but it's really the hard way to do it. Inkscape provides an easier way. I'm going to show you. All you have to do is drag the part of basically the tile that you're going to use for your pattern. You want to drag it off of your area, and what you can do is, I'm going to ungroup these, and to ungroup a group of items in Inkscape, all you have to do is select them and then hit Control-Shift-G and it will ungroup them. See how all three of them now are not in a group? They're still on a layer, but they're not in a group. Now Inkscape has a feature where you can, well, first let's set this to the colors that we want it to be. Let's say we want to use a monochrome version of, I don't know, let's use this brown part of the spectrum here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to select the black because I know it's the darkest, and then I'm going to come down here and select this color. We're going to make all the black be that color, and then we're going to make the gray or the midtones be where was the black? Okay, so we're going to make the gray be this color, or maybe this color. Yeah, let's do that color. And then we're going to make the light gray be this color right here. So let's come up here and select that and come back down here and select that. So now we have a monochrome version of our tile. And let's say we wanted to put it on a background that is, well, we'll get to that in a minute. It's going to be, the background we put it on is going to be one of these two right here. But the whole pattern is going to, the whole image is going to be monochrome, and it's going to basically be a tiled version of this on a lighter colored background that's in the same hue. So let's I want to zoom out a little bit. So after you get your colors selected, just select all of those objects. We have all three of them selected. And then all we have to do is come up here to Path. Actually, it's not in the Path menu, it's in the Objects menu. Objects, Pattern, Objects to Pattern, and click that. So now you'll see over here we have one item, one object in our layer, and that object is a pattern. So how do we use it? Well, using it is really simple. All you have to do is apply it to a shape. So let's say we wanted to create a shape over here, and just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to make it the color that we're going to, you're not going to be able to see it here in a minute, but I just want to show you, I want to point something out to you. So I'm going to make it that color, and what we're going to do is, after you get your shape on the canvas, you just come over here to your fill and stroke menu, or your fill and stroke tab, and all you see, here's the fill color, and you have the gradients here, and you have a mesh gradient, and then notice this one, this is a pattern. You can fill this shape with a pattern, and all you have to do is select it, and you can choose your patterns here, but since we only have one, and it's this one, it's already there. So now what we can do is we can edit this pattern. So if you double click on it, double click on that shape, you'll get this funny looking square that's got two squares on opposite corners, and you have this round control point. And then you see this X? That X is where you click if you want to actually, it's this corner one. If you want to reposition it, you just drag on that. So let's say we want to line this up with the corner, with that corner. You could put it right on the corner, but really, I mean, it's a pattern, so all you really got to do is just resize it. Now, if you want to make this smaller so there's more of these tiles, you just click on this one down here and hold your control. And actually, you don't even have to hold control, but if you don't hold control, see what happens? You can misshape your pattern, but if you hold control, it will maintain the aspect ratio of the tiles. So you could scale this down to as small as you want, and then select it, and there you have, it's awfully busy pattern because it's so small, but let's say we want to go in and make some adjustments. We can adjust that up to a larger size. Now you might be thinking, well, that feels busy and they're kind of cramped together, and I'll show you in a minute how you can fix that. The same principles will apply, but there's a way that you can fix it. So remember, I said we were going to put this on a background that's a shade of this same hue, but it's gone now. That's because when we applied the pattern, it wiped out all of the underlying color information from the shape that we used the pattern on. Remember, this is not a fill. You can have a fill or you can have a pattern, but you can't have a fill and a pattern. When you put the pattern on it, it ignores the fill color that you had. So all you have to do to fix that is go back to your layers and create another rectangle. And because we already have that color loaded, that was the last color we used, that's what color is going to come out. And then just drag it underneath. And now you have this pattern that you could, and we will. I'm going to export it just to show you something else that maybe isn't obvious to you. See this line right here? That's the edge of our canvas. And if you notice this right edge, these tiles are hanging over that canvas. Well, when you export, I'm going to change this DPI to a lower resolution because we're not really going to need it. All we really need for this is 300 DPI because our canvas is the exact size of the image that we want to create. So we can set the DPI to 300, and then when we export this as a PNG, it will be print quality at the right size. So we're going to export this. I'm going to just save it on my computer. And you'll see it takes a minute because Inkscape is creating an image that is a high quality image. So now if we open this, actually I'll just open it with Windows Photos. So here's our if it was a wall print, you know, or a poster, this is what it would look like. Now, what I wanted to point out is that even though we had some of this pattern hanging over the edge of the canvas, it still got clipped. So when you export, you can export a number of ways. Like, let me go back to here. You see how you can export the document and it'll export everything. You'll see the preview down here. You can export selection, which is only the selection that you're working on. And see how if I would have exported the selection, it would have included everything off of the canvas. But it didn't, because I used Page. And Page clips whatever you're exporting. It clips it right at the edge of your canvas, so we don't get the individual tile over here, and we don't get any of the rest of the rectangle that has the pattern applied. So that's kind of a little side note on exporting. You can export the document, which is everything you've created, even if it's off the canvas. You can select the page, which is only the part that you're focused on using, right? Everything inside of the canvas. This basically just exports what's visible in the canvas. And then you have selection, which is whatever you have selected at the time. Right now, the big rectangle is selected, and that's what it would export. But if I had this selected, that's what it would export. So if you're exporting your work to go on something that's a specific size, you want to use whatever the page is, whatever the canvas size is. And then when you export it, it will come out exactly like what you want to use. So that's how you can create a pattern in full. But remember, I said I was going to show you something else that kind of expands on this idea. Let's say that this is too busy. There's too many of these in a given space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here, and this will actually help you with something else as well. Let me turn this off so we can't see it. We're going to keep it that color because actually let's not keep it that color. It doesn't matter. We'll change the color in a minute. What you want to do now is after you've applied this pattern to that rectangle, it's independent from it. Like if you come in here and, well, actually you can't go in there and edit it. You have to change this back to objects before you can. Say we wanted to make another one that looked just like this but in a different color. You have to go and change this back to objects or paths. It is an object right now. It's just a pattern object. It's not a path object. You want to change this back to paths in order to change the color. So what you do is you just select that, and this is important too, right? In fact, I need to rename these so that I don't get confused. Right now you have this rectangle 25, which is the target rectangle that the pattern is applied to, right? So I'm going to name this target rectangle. So that's the target that has the pattern applied to it, and this is the pattern. I'm going to name that pattern. It's only going to be named that for a minute or two, and I'm going to call this background so I don't get confused. So you have the rectangle that has the pattern on it. You have the pattern. Right now, this is a pattern because we changed a group of objects into a pattern. But now what we're going to do, and this is an important idea to understand, we're going to change this back to paths. So with it selected, you come up here to Object, Pattern, and now we're going to go from pattern, which it is right now, to objects, which we want it to be, those paths. Okay, so now we have independent paths again, and you can see them over here. The pattern, and that's why I called it that before, because see what happens? It releases everything that it had inside of it, but it still stays there. There's nothing on it. You can turn it on and off. It's just a conceptual artifact that's left when you go from a pattern back to objects. But here's the reason why we did that. We can now change this. We can change the colors of this, and it won't affect the pattern that's applied over here. Watch when we go from black to, let's make this this dark yellowish brown color. And let's make the gray this color. And let's make the light gray this color. So now we have another version of the same pattern, but it's in the yellow hue. And I think with this one we will change the layout. So how are we going to do that? Well, you can create a pattern from any number of objects. You just have to start with the objects arranged the way you want them. So let's say, I don't know, let's say we want to space these out a little bit. All you have to do is come up here and select your objects that you want to be part of your pattern, and then right underneath, actually we're going to use, let's see, let's just create a rectangle that goes under them or over them, however you want to do it. I'm going to drag out a rectangle here. And let's say we want to create one full, or no, let's do a half, about half between them. Okay, so oh, I didn't drag a rectangle out. I was selecting them. So we want to drag a rectangle out here. And we want to do something, say about like that. And if you put that underneath all of the objects that we're going to make our pattern with, you can even kind of set the color to how you want it to look. So it's almost lined up, but not quite. And I'm going to call this is a key point. I'm going to call this spacer. You can call it whatever you want, but the idea is we're going to use this object to create distance between our other ones. And in order to align these, we want these three to be in a group, so I'm going to select those three and hit Control G, and now this is one item that I can move around. And I can incidentally select these two items and then come over to the Align panel and then align them based on, it doesn't matter whether it's the first or last selected since it's just two items, but I'm going to do last selected, and I'm going to line their left edge, and I'm going to align their top edge if I can find it. Oh, that's not the right one. this one, their top edge. So now we have these two items lined up. Now let's take this object and duplicate it by hitting Control D, and then we'll drag it down and put it over here. And we're going to align that one and the rectangle. We're going to align its right edge and its bottom edge. So now we have this staggered pattern, and it's going to space. It's not going to feel so busy because they're not going to be right next to each other. Basically, we're just taking like a variation of this and we're spacing it out a little bit more. However, we need all of these objects in order to make our pattern. So we're going to select all of those. Let's see, is this even? Yeah, this is still an artifact from before, so we don't want that. We just want the spacer and the two tiles. So select those. And then we want to come up here to Object, same as what we did before. Object, Pattern, Objects to Pattern. And now you have another unnamed. That's why I left this in here. I wanted to see if it would use one that was already there, but it doesn't. So it just creates a new pattern that you have to name. And I'm going to call this pattern. And then I'm going to get rid of this old one because that's truly what it is. When you go from a pattern to objects, you get this artifact, and I meant to point that out, but I will after we do this other one. So I'm going to delete that. So now this is our pattern, and we want to apply this. Notice none of this one hasn't changed at all. That pattern is still in here as a pattern. We created it and it's in Inkscape as a pattern. But what we can do now is we can select the target rectangle and we can apply this pattern to that rectangle by selecting it. And you see it, if it's not, because I didn't really take the time to line these up exactly half, it's going to be a little bit off. But you get the idea. Ideally what we would want to do is make sure that our spacing is exactly right and go into all that detail, but I'm trying to keep these videos shorter than the last one. So I don't know if it's going to work out that way, but so it still works the same. If you double click inside of it, you still get these control handles, and you can make this thing smaller, right? It's still a pattern, it's just it's got a repeat that you can kind of see here. So we want to position this depending on how large or small you want it to be. You just zoom out or zoom in, and you again just do that by double clicking. I want it to be a little bigger than that, like maybe that. And then you could do the same thing that we did before and export it, and you would have, you know, a wall portrait, or maybe something for a phone case, or maybe a poster. Anything that you wanted to be this size you could do. And incidentally, what you can do, this is the nice thing about these patterns, is you can always go back to the other one because now it's a pattern. So you can generate these patterns, and you know, you can, there's gap control, you've got all kinds of settings in here that you can tinker with on your pattern fill menu. But the idea is, once you create a pattern and it's in Inkscape, you have that pattern and you can apply it to other things. Now, I don't know if these will show up after you restart Inkscape without doing something to go in and save them. But I can look into that and maybe do a different video on that later. I've never saved them. I've never saved mine. They're so easy to create, and I have the source files that I can just regenerate them. But you know, that may be something that you want to do. You might want to save the patterns that you create into a collection and use them. It looks like you can because there's a bunch of them in here that are organized, so there must be a way that you can save yours. At any rate, that's how you do patterns if you're going to put them on a specific sized workpiece. And now what we're going to do is, let's change this back to, I'll show you what I was talking about a little bit ago. And we can get rid of this because we don't need it right now. Now see, we still have this pattern, and I want to save one of these. So I'm going to turn these back into objects by selecting them, select the pattern, and then go up here to Object, Patterns, Pattern, Object, or Pattern to Objects, and click that. And now it's 3 separate objects again. I want to keep that one, and we can delete these. But notice, actually I selected everything, but notice that pattern artifact is still there. The spacer is there, and the pattern is left from, so if we delete the spacer, which is the background, that pattern artifact is still there. You can't see it, but it's what Inkscape used to create the pattern. So this is always left over. And you can, if you don't name it something before, you could confuse it with some of your elements that you're using for the pattern. That's why I named it something that is obvious. That's the pattern, and I can delete that and it doesn't affect anything. So that's the one we want to keep. Let's keep this one down here and delete this one. It doesn't matter which one you keep, but all right. So now, what about if you want to create one small image that you can apply or use, and it itself is tileable? That's a little different take. What you're doing is the thing that Inkscape just did for us by repeating it inside of a shape. What you're doing is you're allowing something else to do that with your image that you create. So that means your image has to be tileable. And we're just going to use this same one, but I'm not going to change the color because that'll just make the video longer. But the way you want to do this is you want to make your document size something very easy to do math on. So I'm going to change mine back to 1000 by 1000. Alright, so now it's a square, 1000 by 1000, and I'm going to use this same image. Or this vector, I'm going to downscale it, and then I'll put it here. Alright, so let's say that we wanted this pattern. How do we want to do this? First, let's start in the center. So let's grab this item and let's center it on the page. Make sure relative to page is selected, and then just click both of those and it'll put it in the middle. Alright, so we have this item, and we have a 1000 by 1000 pixel canvas. So this is at 500, right? This is at 500, and if you go 500 to the right of this, you would be right on this edge. And if you go 500 to the left of this, you would be right on this edge. And that's what we want to do. and we even want to go 500 up and 500 down, and that will give us basically 5 of these arranged in an offset pattern. So to do that, what you need to do is, I don't know if I've pointed this out before or not, but if you have an object selected, you can use your control arrows to nudge it to the left or to the right. And each time you nudge this to the left or to the right, it does it in a number of pixels. And that's a setting inside of Inkscape that you can control. And right now mine is set to 2, I think. It might be 1, but I think it's 2. And if you change that, you can make it be exactly 500. Or you can make it be exactly 1,000, or you can set it to whatever you want. What we need is 500 because we want the next one of these to be centered on the edge of this. So we're going to come up here to, I think it's in Edit, Preferences, and you should get this box that pops up, right? And somewhere in here, I think it's in the interface. Can't remember where it's at because I haven't used it in a while. It's under behavior. It's in the behaviors. Steps is what you're looking for. Yeah, and see how the arrow keys move by 2 pixels? We want to change that to 500. That's exactly half of the width of our document. So if we set that to 500 and just move this out of the way, I'm going to change it back here in a minute, but you only have to change it when you need to. So now with this selected, if I hit those arrow keys, watch what happens. It's exactly 500. So all we have to do is Control D to duplicate that, and then hit the right arrow once, and then hit Control D and the up arrow once, and hit Control D and the left arrow, Control D, and then the down arrow twice. You know what? I don't want this one here. I said I wanted to do 5 because I don't want it to be an exact grid. I want it to be off a little bit every other one. So what we can do is Control D. Actually, we don't have to duplicate that. All you have to do is select it and then just move it over here where we want it. Now, if you wanted this to be offset, let's just do that. Let's offset it. Let's make this a staggered pattern rather than a how you set this up is going to determine how the pattern will look when you repeat this tile. And what I want is I want this actually up here. So I'm going to change my steps. Now that I've got all my 500s where I want them, I'm going to change my steps to 250, half of that. And now I'm going to move these 2 side ones. I'm going to move them up just one spot, and that's exactly half of what it was before. And then I can Control D and then move it down 2, and Control D and move that one down 2. And now we have this. It's going to be an offset grid pattern. Now you may be thinking, or you might be thinking back to earlier in the video where I said everything that's hanging off of the edge is not going to be visible as long as you export the page. This is exactly what our tile is going to look like. And so you're going to have one complete tile, but then you're going to have halves of tile all around the outside. However, when you take this tile and put it next to itself, these 2 are going to match up with these 2 and make a full pattern, a full tile. Same with this. It's going to do the same thing when you put one on top of the other, and I'll demonstrate that here in a minute. So let's export this the way it is into a ping, and make sure you have page selected so that you don't end up with something that has all of the, we want these to be cut in half is the point. So we'll export that, and I'm just going to overwrite that previous tile that I had before. So now we have in our let's open this up in Inkscape or in GIMP, and I will show you what happens with this. Alright, so now we've got a tile, we've got an image that's tileable, it's repeatable. So you have this image. Now the way you can check this to see what it's going to look like is, if I can find this, we want to do, I thought it was in the layer transform, yeah, layer transform offset. So what this does in GIMP is it allows you to offset the image by half or by an arbitrary amount. You can create them and then wrap it around. So watch what happens when we offset the width and the height by half. See how it's almost the same thing? And that means that it's going to repeat. It's gonna be a repeatable pattern because everything is lined up the way it needs to be. So when you put these two corners together, you'll have this, and then this bottom fills in down here, and this bottom fills in over here and creates another one of these. So this is a tileable pattern. You can export this as an image like it is right now, and then when you put it in a program or something that lines a bunch of these up, which I'll just show you, let me create a new file, new. Let's just make this 5,000 by 5,000. Create a new one of these, and because I'm creating it with such high DPI. Actually, I'm just going to create it anyway. Alright, so I'm going to create a transparent. Actually, let's leave it on black. It probably is going to look really good on black. So if I bring this, I'm just going to drag in this tile. Here's the image that we just created. It's that PNG that we exported from Inkscape. I'm going to drag it in here, and then I want to scale this down. Let's scale it down, scale the layer down to an even 1,000. So scale it down, and then with the move tool we will select this pattern or this tile, and I'm just kind of showing you what would happen if you duplicated this. Duplicate that layer and then put it next to this one. Now I'm not going to take the time to line them up exactly, but you see what's happening. And if we duplicate that again and put it, I'm going to lock that background because I keep grabbing it. If you don't know, in GIMP you can lock a background. You can either lock the visibility, or you can lock the visibility, the movability, or the the alpha channel, you can lock it so that you don't accidentally grab a hold of it. And that's what's happening to me. I've been grabbing a hold of it. And see, now when I miss the layer that I'm trying to grab, it doesn't let me grab the background because it's locked. Now I'm not going to line these up exactly, but normally what would happen is you'd have the program that you load this image into would do this lining up. But so I'm going to Control Shift D to create a duplicate of that, and I'm just going to drag it over here. You get the idea. It's tileable. All four sides line up with the other sides so that when you repeat it, it makes a repeatable pattern, and it lines up nicely. Now I don't have them lined up exactly, but you get the idea here, because we took an item and we put it exactly, we lined it up with itself. So that's the idea. I don't really have a program that will tile everything exactly so that you can see how nice it works out, but that's the point. And that's how you can create tiles or create patterns in two different ways using Inkscape. And we used GIMP to show you how this second way works. So if you want to create an image that you can repeat in another program, you do it this way, this second way. If you want to create the image in its full size and use Inkscape to tile it, then you create it that first way. But at any rate, that's two ways to create patterns using Inkscape. I hope that helps, and thanks for watching.